Welcome to the Dr. Truth Show. It is the 4th of September, Friday, 2020, and we are in sunny Miami Beach, Florida. Sophia and I are here to talk to you about sleep. So today's episode is going to be focused on how we can get better sleep and what sleep really means to our body. What do you know about sleep, Sophia?
Basically, I know that you sleep so you can recharge your body.
That's right. That's very good. Sleep is one of the most important things our body does. It shuts down so many different activities and restarts new activities to regenerate tissue, proteins, neurotransmitters, all of that stuff that goes on in the brain that we need to be healthy, to have homeostasis, which is a term we like to use to describe how the body maintains equilibrium. All that happens during a period of about 6 to 8 hours when our consciousness really doesn't go away, but it goes into a different level. And sleep is divided up differently. There's the entry point to sleep, there's sleep itself, there's deep sleep, and then there's wakefulness, or a period of time when there's a certain amount of awareness that one comes out of sleep, and that's when we remember or partially remember dreams. But one of the things I think is most important and what I see in my patients is that sleep hygiene is really something people just don't understand. And just saying sleep hygiene sounds pretty weird. And it's a term that we use to describe the environment around how we sleep. So what happens is that people typically don't sleep when the sun goes down. And that's how our ancestors used to go to bed. So the sun would go down and everything would start to go quiet. There was no electricity. There was no computers, no television. So for thousands and thousands of years, humans would essentially go to sleep when the sun would go down. Now in modern human history, so about 100 years since we've had electricity for everyone. And what's happened is that people are dialed into this electricity, and we want to call this electricity more or less dirty electricity because it's spitting out all kinds of blue light and electromagnetic frequencies, EMFs. There's all kinds of wave frequencies through the atmosphere, 4G, 5G, whatever. All this transfer of data occurs electrically, and the brain is a receiver and a transmitter. So believe it or not, your brain picks up some of that energy around us. It's not just that we process information from our eyes, ears, and nose and taste buds. It's much more than that. The brain really does receive input from the atmosphere. And there are studies that can really demonstrate how impressive that can be. And I think as we get more into brain research, and I'll discuss that in another episode, we know that the brain really needs to be shut off from this exterior energy. So this energy field, if you will, that we sleep around is on all the time. So your coffee maker might be on Wi-Fi, or your iPhone or Samsung smartphone is next to your bed, or you have your television on Netflix watching serial binging of The Punisher, whatever you're doing. The idea is that you really are introducing unnecessary distractions to the brain. The brain can't shut down and can't go into a regenerative state, and you essentially don't age well. You start to pro-age because the sleep processes allow us to produce the proteins and the other neurochemical compounds that are needed to run the body. So what I'd like to talk about now is how one can get around some of this environmental discharge of electricity and what you can do to help protect your brain and get better sleep, and so that you heal your body, regenerate your body in a more effective way. Do you know of any possible ways to do that, Sophia?
I think it's called melatonin. You can take that.
Yes, you can take melatonin. There are things we won't talk about that at this moment, but what I was trying to get at is how do you get into a sleep environment? What environment do you think is best for sleep? Can you think of a couple things you would do before you would enter into a sleep state?
Definitely total darkness.
Good. Yep, total darkness. The brain obviously has sensitivity to light through the eyes, so the eyes can get stimulated very easily through light. So if a room is brightly lit, or if there's exterior lighting that's coming in through a window, that could affect the way that sleep occurs. So yes, so darkness is important. And some people have to have total blackout with blinds, and they shut off every source of light in a room. And some people can live with light. It just depends, but it's better to have less light. So that's good. Another thing is sound. There's a lot to be said to auditory stimulation during sleep or trying to get to sleep. Noises from neighbors, noises from aircraft flying overhead, noises from sirens outside with police and ambulances. All of those things disturb our sleep. And most of us live in big cities, and we all know about how that can be. So having a window that's open versus a closed window might be something to think about if you have a lot of exterior noises. So having less visual stimuli and auditory stimuli are important. Another thing that can be really important is to reduce the amount of electricity. So the electricity around us, as I mentioned before, coming through whatever that you have around you. Could be a alarm clock, your iPhone, your television, your computer, iPad. All of those things should be removed from your bed, from your sleeping area. So most people have their bedroom turned into a makeshift sort of office. They have computer, might have other things in the bed, paperwork, books, whatever. People eat in their beds, and especially with the COVID pandemic, people are at home more, and they're comforting themselves by cocooning. So their bedrooms have become kind of, if you will, home offices. So what I recommend is dividing up the living space and making the bedroom only for two purposes. What are those two purposes, Sophia?
Sleeping and changing.
No. Sleeping and sex.
Right.
That's it. So your bedroom should be just about those two things. So sleep and sex for the bed. If anything else needs to be done, you do that in the kitchen or the living room or wherever, the home office that you set up. So the bedroom should be ideally structured around getting the best sleep that you possibly can get. And sleep is so underrated. We know that it's so important for our health. So trying to do that, trying to make an effort to shutting off the television before you enter into your bedroom. So even 30 or 40 minutes before you go to bed, starting to shut down things that you're doing that stimulate your brain. So reading, maybe a document that you have to talk about with work colleagues the next day, or worrying about bills or seeing your bank statement. All that kind of stuff probably shouldn't happen right before you go to bed. So shutting off electricity, television, phones, computers, being cognizant that your bedroom really is your shrine for health. And once you get into bed, there are other things that go on. So some people like their rooms really cold. And we find that coldness, or this feeling of being chilled at night, for some really can be actually counterintuitive, because then you need extra covers, and then you toss and turn, and then it can be potentially too warm, and then the air conditioning is on, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. So really the ideal temperature to sleep in is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And the body's at 98.6. So 72 to 75 is really ideal. Anything colder than that could be distracting to the body and probably not healthy. The other thing is to try not to drink anything with caffeine. So if you're having a Coca-Cola or Pepsi or coffee or Starbucks, Frappuccino, whatever it is, try to avoid drinking or consuming caffeine. And chocolate has caffeine, so a lot of people have chocolate things before or after they're getting ready for bed or after dinner. So try to be aware of that. So caffeine beverages, and even some tea has caffeine. Green tea has caffeine in it. Chamomile tea is a nice tea to have that doesn't have caffeine, and it could be relaxing. So Sophia mentioned melatonin. So there's some things that you can take naturally that stimulate sleep, and melatonin is one. There are other things, valerian root, and I'm not going to get into the biochemistry of why these things work, but they do. The next step is really to find comfort in your bed. So a pillow that's not soft or too hard, or a mattress that's too hard and not soft, whatever it is, or the comforter that's scratchy or itchy, all of that needs to be worked out. So you need to figure out what's best for your sleeping pattern. Now, it's been said that we sleep in patterns really based on how we were in the womb, how we laid in our mother's belly, kind of transfers out to our sleeping position. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've read that. So some people sleep with their arm under their head or behind their head, or they sleep on their side, or they sleep on their tummy. So if you realize that you have a certain sleep pattern, if your certain sleep pattern is particularly challenging, you do need to have a pillow and a comforter and a mattress that match that. So that's just something to be aware of. The other thing that comes up sometimes is, do you or should you have some sleeping pill on hand? If you just can't get to sleep and you're ruminating about your day, what should you do? You know, do you toss and turn? Do you try to force the sleep, or should you have something on hand that really can knock you out? I tell patients that it's always nice to have your natural substances first, and using the melatonin, as we talked about, or valerian root, or the chamomile tea can help. And if not, then there are some medications that we can use that are prescription based, and their names are Ambien and Lunesta and Regeneration and Trazodone, and I'm sure people have heard of all those names and may have those prescriptions on their nightstand, but try to use those things very sparingly. If you do need them, use them only when you need them, and you should take them 30 to 40 minutes before you go to sleep, not any earlier, and should never ever drink with those things, because they could cause a accelerated effect of the medication or cause some change of brain chemistry that is unwanted. So some people will take benzodiazepines, for instance, Xanax or Ativan, Klonopin, and those things do work to help relax the mind. But what happens is that the next morning there's amnesia or forgetfulness. So you might have some issues with thinking the next day. So those things should be really limited in use as well. And another thing that I think should be brought up is house pets. House pets are always a big issue because everyone loves a dog or a cat, and especially a puppy or a kitten. But they can really cause a lot of sleep disturbances with their potty training and their needs, and especially if they're not properly trained or crated, they'll probably want to get in bed with you, and which is fine, but then you have another living creature moving around that may keep you up at night. So just be aware. With COVID right now, people are adopting or sourcing out animals to purchase for their homes, their apartments, to keep them company. So just be aware that could be a detriment to your overall health and wellness if you can't sleep. So I think we'll get into the next topic of sleep, which is deep sleep. So we're getting into kind of a sleep pattern. We've gone to sleep, we're sleeping. Now, how do you get into deep sleep? So deep sleep, which is a theta state of brain chemistry, theta waves occur during these deeper sleep periods, and it's called REM sleep, or rapid eye movement. So people's eyes will move very quickly from side to side. Sometimes they will shimmer or shimmy about, and that is a demonstration of the brain getting into a deeper form of restfulness. That's a very important place to be because that's where the healing happens. That's where the brain regenerates proteins and produces neurotransmitter and chemicals that could be considered healing in nature and cause the brain to affect the rest of the body, which it does. It's connected to every organ. We have hormones produced in the brain. We have a spinal cord that goes down through the back, of course, and sends out nerves to all kinds of organs and other parts of the body. So everything is really emanating from the brain, and the brain's telling the body what it needs to do during this period of time. So it's not just the brain actually sleeping, the organs shut down too. And during that time, the liver's making proteins and healing, and there's detoxification going on, and there's all kinds of things happening around the blood system and circulation with hormones and neurotransmitters and different types of chemicals released from cells. So there's so much happening in that deeper restful state that you have to be aware that that is really where you get the very best healing and regenerative components for staying young. So just to keep that in mind. And that stays on throughout sleep for a few 30, 40 minutes at times, maybe an hour. You might get a couple of episodes or parables of those periods where they're back-ended by maybe some more wakeful sleep, maybe some tossing and turning or awareness of what's going on around you and your sleeping environment. One other thing that we can talk about before we get into the last part of the discussion is drinking water. I didn't mention that. Drinking a lot of water or fluids before you go to bed is not a bad idea, only because it helps detoxify the body. So having a glass of water or something like that before sleep is not a bad idea. But not too much water, because then you're going to have to get up and use the restroom. And if your bladder gets full during the night, and especially as you get older, you may not have capacity to maintain your bladder throughout the night, and that may wake you up and disturb sleep. So some men have problems with that as they get older because of their prostate, and they can't empty their bladder so easily. So that could be a disturbance, and especially during deep sleep. If you had to wake up to use the toilet during deep sleep, you'd ruin your whole purpose of sleep. So lastly, I think we're going to talk about waking up. When we wake up, everybody wakes up a bit differently, but about between hours of 4 and 6, so around 5:30 or so, most people start to stir in the early hours of the morning. There's a period of time when the body starts to come out of its rest cycle, and there is the sense that the sun rising may have some place in that awareness of being awake. Of course, when sunlight starts to stream through a window, you do realize that it is morning. But one thing that's important is that when you wake up in the morning, there is a sense that it's a shock to the body. You want to try to remove that pulse of wake feeling and feeling of being stirred. And people will oftentimes try to deny that and try to go back to sleep, hit a snooze button, or not pay attention to their alarm. And I think that could really be something, could be difficult, because you get back into sleep, then you wake back up because of the alarm. So it's better to wake up once you first wake up and allow your consciousness to come back into full form. Better not to go back into sleep or try to force yourself to get more rest, even if it's just a short period of time, because that's not going to be healthy for your day's activities. So once you wake up, try to force yourself to get out of bed and start moving around. And the best thing that you can do, again, is having a glass of water when you wake up in the morning, and taking a stretch, doing a little bit of a deep knee bend, get blood moving around. That's super important. And that's one thing a lot of people won't do. They wake up, they have a cup of coffee, they may watch a little television, watch the news. So better to move around, stir the body, take some time to get blood flowing, have the water, and start your day. I won't go into any diet-related concerns around sleep at this point. I just wanted to talk about sleep in general and try to get some sort of organized thinking around sleep hygiene which you may not really consider as a term until now, but now in the future, perhaps you might refer back to that in your preparation for sleep and understand that there are things you can do to really improve the outcome of what goes on at night inside your brain and your body. So, as before, you can always contact us for any questions or concerns, 305-672-4733, and you can reach us through our website, www.halllongevity.com, or email clinic@halllongevity.com. Look forward to speaking to you next week. Have a great weekend and happy Labor Day. Bye-bye.